If you've had any experiences recently that were tied to balancing standing out versus blending in, or honoring something that feels really authentic to you versus avoiding maybe ruffling feathers or, stepping out in some way from the norm, then this full moon is one that could provide a bit of catalyst or clarity when it comes to the path forward that feels more balanced or authentic to you. And I say that for a few reasons. Not only do we have this full moon in the fiery, courageous sign of Leo, represented by the courageous lion, ruled by the sun. But speaking of the sun, this full moon is in opposition not only with the sun, but with the sun, Mars, Mercury, Pluto, and Venus. There's a bit of tension here between the me, that being the Leo sign that the moon is in, and the we, that being the sign that these 5 major astral bodies are in. But we see that there's a bit more intensity here, and there's more of an indication of notable catharsis emotionally, or even a breaking point for some of us because of the key planets that are all in opposition with the moon right now. And more notably, Pluto, this planet that involves the underbelly of things, really bringing up, drumming up. When you sweep, you're kind of sweeping up something dormant that could come out, could be more cathartic, insightful. It's like, oh, I didn't even realize that that was there. But because this moment, this experience, this emotional intensity happened, I'm able to find the words. And so I wanted to give you that overview of on an individual level, and then on a more mundane astrology collective level. Like I said, Leo represents leadership. So that can be on a, political scale. It can be the leader in a family or in a friend group or at a boss at a job. And we're seeing that there's this opposition, this tension between that sort of leadership, these guides, and the collective. The fact that we see so many planets all together in this very progressive collective sign of Aquarius that's all about what are we doing together and move forward growing in a progressive way. Considering that Pluto is also there at play in this full moon with these planets, this is also indicating that there could be some unexpected sort of big moments around the time of this full moon. That's the most general, lighthearted way I feel comfortable describing it here, if you catch my drift. And so we're going to be diving deeper into what that means uniquely for all of us based off of your unique zodiac sign. I'm excited to dive into that with you. Now, before we continue, I want to remind you, though I have sold out of all of my 2026 astrology planners, thank you for that, by the way, I still sell digital astrology planners and digital wall calendars, which are very unique. These wall calendars automatically upload into your Google Calendar, your iCalendar, your Yahoo Calendar, and it uploads all of the top transits of all of 2026 in the same place where you might already have plans and schedule things and have alarms already going in your phone. They seamlessly blend in and go into those calendars. If you're the type of person that scrolls on social media on YouTube or TikTok or something like that, and you're like, yeah, I know that there's this transit coming up, but what does it mean for me? The digital calendars provide that. So if that interests you, I am really proud of it. You should check it out. With that said, let's go ahead and dive into these all signs forecasts. As always, I suggest listening to your rising sign. That's going to be a more specific description of the specific area of life that you might notice this transit, this full moon happening in for you, and the overarching themes that are tied to that area of life. If you want to listen to your moon sign, that can be more of an indication of how you might emotionally interface with, emotionally feel about things that are occurring around the time of this full moon. And then if you want to listen to your sun sign, that one's more so tied to how people perceive you, your public image, and oftentimes your career, that sort of outer circle aspect of things. And so that is something to consider. But with all of that said, I guess I will just see you at your reading. Hello to my Aries friends. So this full moon in Leo will be happening in your 5th house of your creativity, your joy, things that spark wonder and curiosity within you. So think about, something that you feel really excited about. This could involve your career. This could involve maybe a hobby or a passion project, or maybe you're the type of person that that really loves going to the theater and you feel so inspired and energized and you just fall in love with the actors and the craft. And maybe that's not something that you want to turn into a career, even a hobby. It's just something that you enjoy partaking in and enjoying and supporting. Those are just specific examples, but you get the gist of the overarching theme of where this full moon will likely land within your life. So a few days leading up to the day of or following this full moon, you might have some experiences considering this pretty notable opposition with these 5 planets in Aquarius, where you might have a catalyst for better or worse that ends up helping you to realize how much you love some type of creative outlet. Or you might be realizing where you've maybe even been suppressing your fun or toning yourself down in some way to kind of like go along to get along or to assimilate with in a certain environment. And what comes to mind for some reason is work for some of you. Maybe you've entered an environment or you're in an environment where maybe it's a really constructive thing. You kind of realize, you know what? And after that experience, on that note, you guys aren't getting my personality anymore. And sometimes that actually helps people cope with a certain dynamic at work that actually ends up making the day better for them. And then they're able to express that at home. I just want to remind any of you who maybe identify with that, where you're kind of like, yeah, maybe I do tone it down, but it's constructive for me. It helps me. I just want to remind you to turn it back on. Remember to turn it back on. Remember, if you find yourself trying to maybe shapeshift in some way to maybe, better coexist with people. If there is an element of that, especially around the time of this full moon, that it's spotlighted, wow, I haven't laughed this hard in so long, or, oh my goodness, like, I can be pretty funny, and it's just because I feel so comfortable with these people here, and now it's coming out. Or, something like that, where you realize that contrast of like, man, I haven't sort of like moved this muscle in my personality in a long time, and I actually really love it. Those are some things that's something that could come out around this time. But I think ultimately, the things that you love, your authentic expression, and following that sort of spark and joy is something that might pop up in some way around the time of this full moon. And it can be really helpful to follow that inkling. And just, one more reminder that it's not all about, you're going to find out that you're a victim to everyone around you and everyone hates your real personality and you're the main character and you need to shine your light. Totally. That might be a variation of that might be a reality for some of you, but it's important to remember that there's an opposition here. And so it could be that there's this bigger Aquarius calling towards being more considerate of the collective as you hold space for your own self, So for another example is like maybe you're with family and maybe you love cracking certain jokes or saying certain things that you and your friends find funny, you and your partner find great, or, that type of thing. And then you realize, oh, okay, there's a certain level of respect that is called upon you when coexisting maybe with your elders or certain family members. And that doesn't mean that, I should be able to be myself, but do you guys get what I mean? It's striking this balance between the you and your authentic self and the collective. Oh, one more idea. Another catalyst that could happen for you is being in new community or different community that kind of spotlights, wow, oh my gosh, I actually love this way more. And I want to follow that inkling. Okay, that's my reading for you, my Aries friends. I'm wishing you a beautiful full moon, and I will see you at the end for the journal prompts. Hello to my Taurus friends. This Leo full moon is going to be really spotlighting your more private life, your inner circle, and also your past in various ways, the more formative years in your life, and even depending on the astrologer and the type of astrology that is focused on, from depending on your perspective, this could also involve even like past life things. And again, like the foundation of this overarching theme for you with Leo here, because it'll be transiting your 4th house if you're a Taurus rising, is that it's providing the spotlight on who you are and what you love authentically as it pertains to your past and your formative years and your community. And there may be even potential tension or even a spotlight on emotional safety or this balance between emotional safety and external expectations. You might notice overarching themes around what you personally need to feel safe, what you personally need to feel grounded in what works for you as an individual, finding that balance, and also being able to show up for others, or again, this external expectations. You might notice overarching themes like that. And so it can be helpful to consider releasing old narratives about how maybe you're supposed to belong, how you're supposed to coexist or be around. I feel like there might be overarching themes with your family specifically, Taurus, or like the people closest to you. And it could be helpful to pause to explore what it looks like to coexist while also embracing your own uniqueness. I think that for some of you, you might have some experiences where your job or something having to do with your own public image is kind of like butting heads with your past in some way. Like something from your past might come out. Maybe it's visible to the public in some way or the outer circle. But I think that what could happen is that there's something involving like your family, like in real life, or things from your past that come up that are almost in opposition to maybe a direction that you're wanting to go in or something like that. Excuse me. But I think that ultimately it'll be helpful for you to find grounding in your roots. Find grounding in your past, find wisdom, find insight, find guidance from your past in some way. But that's my reading for you, my Taurus friends. I'm wishing you a beautiful Leo full moon, and I'll see you at the end for the journal prompts. Hello to my Gemini friends. So this Leo full moon is happening in your third house of communication, information exchange, the internet, short-term travel. Think about like short-term travel as in like you're going over a few blocks. You're maybe going to a nearby grocery store. The third house also involves things like your siblings or your neighbors, like people in your more immediate vicinity, so to speak. But the overarching theme here is conversation, communication, your mindset, and your voice being center stage around the time of this Leo full moon. And I think that for many of you, my Gemini friends, your voice carries a lot of weight right now. And I think that some of you might be having a sort of, not dark night of the soul, but you might have an experience where you feel a bit challenged. Like you might feel challenged to speak up about something, or you might have spoken up about something, or you might have shown up more authentically, and there's this sort of verbal or even like online challenging of it in some way, or like feeling like there's more discourse based off of the words that you spoke or based off of conversation. And again, I say that because we see that the full moon in Leo will be in your third house of conversation, information exchange, but it's in opposition with these 5 planets, including our central star, the sun, but, including Mars, the planet of aggression, Mercury, the planet of information exchange, but also Pluto, this planet of, deeper seated experiences and feelings that long to be brought to the surface. And there could be a catalyst here that could be very cathartic. You could have very notable conversations. Some of you might have people express things to you that you didn't even fully realize that you needed to learn, or that you were like, whoa, okay, learning new information. And, that's a sign of wisdom, right? Being able to be open-minded to being corrected or learning something different, or being able to admit that we didn't know the whole story and now we're informed. And so now that we know better, we do better. But you might be also realizing where you've been censoring yourself for the sake of being agreeable. And so now it can be a great time for speaking from the heart with authenticity, but with tact. Again, you guys are Geminis. You have the gift of gab. There's a lot of power in your voice and your words off the rip, just on a foundational level. But considering that this full moon is happening in your third house of conversation, it'll be like, just be real, be authentic, but have tact. That's my overarching message for you, my Gemini friends, because conversations will take center stage for many of you. Important conversations, important statements that you might hear or see from others that impact your life as well. But with that said, I am wishing you a beautiful full moon. I'm wishing you integrity in your words, integrity in the words that you speak, but also tact and what's the word? Essentially just forethought before you speak. It's very important right now. But ultimately, this is the last thing I'll say. Leo is the planet of courage. It's the it's the sign of courage. It's the sign that is represented by the lion because of that courage, because of that leadership. And some of you might be called into some leadership and to speak and lead in some way. Or you might have experience where you're reminded that you lead people, or that your words, again, carry weight. So just be mindful of that, but have courage, again, be authentic. It's not about, filtering yourself necessarily. Okay, with that said, I will see you guys at the end for the journal prompts. Thanks for watching. And hello to my Cancer friends. So this Leo full moon will be happening in your second house of income, resources, the means that you need to live your life. So maybe in order to get to your job and have your career or do your hobbies, you need a car for that. Or maybe if you're an artist of some kind, you maybe need some type of equipment, whether it's an instrument or a brush. These are the means that you need in order to live your life, right? And so oftentimes the second house is associated with your income because we do need money in order to obtain the means in order to live our lives. And that can be tied to your career, your job. And so all that to say, this full moon can bring in a bit of clarity or catharsis when it comes to understanding the distinction between your self-worth, your values, and the values of everyone else, and the values of the people around you, like finding this balance and this distinction, especially if they differ in some way. Especially where you maybe have even traded authenticity for approval in some way. Maybe this could involve, again, this could have to do with your job of some kind, but your value isn't up for debate. And that's something to remember, especially with these overarching Leo themes of stepping into a leadership role, stepping into, I love me, I love what I love, and I'm standing here 10 toes down. This is who I am, and that's what makes me a leader, okay? Because I'm here confidently speaking up in alignment with my authentic self. I'm not trying to prove anything over here or do anything over there or any of that. I'm being who I need to be right here and right now. And the second house also has to do with, again, self-worth and your value systems. And when you're able to, what comes up that I feel like some of you might need to hear is the power of fortifying and building up within you your own frame of reference of why you're valuable, who you are, regardless of other people. Like, what do you love? What are you into? What's your personality? What's something that somebody could criticize about you that you could be like, I mean, that sucks. You don't vibe with that, but that's who I am. Like, that's kind of who I am. Like, for example, I'll give you an anecdotal example, but I just want to get to the core of this, that the overarching focus and theme and area of life that will show up for you around the time of this Leo full moon, my Cancer friends, will likely be tied to you standing 10 toes down on who you are and fortifying and creating the love within yourself of loving yourself and valuing yourself before or regardless of outside validation. And the importance of that. And you might have some experiences that spotlight that around this time, because we see that the moon in Leo will be in your second house of value systems, of income, of money, but it'll be in this opposition aspect with these 5 major planets that are in your 8th house in Aquarius, which is the house of other people's money, other people's values, and the sort of codependent intermingling of energy when you're together. In the sort of intermingling of energy financially as well. The 8th house can also be the house of contracts and going into business deals financially, contractually with people as well, and the ramifications of that. And so there's this opposition between you, your own value systems and that love within you, and then this outer sort of love. It could be love as well, these outer connections and relationships and dynamics. And where do you find a balance between those two? I think that for some of you, you might be entering into some contracts right now, a few days leading up to the day of or following the full moon. You might be having experiences that spotlight the importance of getting clear on contracts or, but yeah, those are the overarching themes here. But I do want to say that your value isn't up for debate. What you express is worthy, and it's worthy simply because it's yours, you know? And so that's my overarching theme, right? But I do want to give some anecdotal sort of examples that I just feel called to share with you. One of them is, like I said before, when you're able to like really know who you are, and a lot of this ends up coming with age in general, but especially post Saturn return. I can speak for myself. Saturn's about to leave Pisces. My Saturn return's almost over. It's almost up. And that's been an overarching theme for me personally as a Pisces rising, with it being in my first house. But the power of knowing who you are and the distinction between, hey, I'm being considerate. I'm being completely considerate, but I'm also being myself. And being able to identify when you stand 10 toes down with who you are and you understand the distinction between just allowing you to be yourself. And there's a distinction between that and maybe being selfish or bulldozing over other people or there's a distinction there. When you're able to clearly understand that, you're also able to more clearly identify when people are projecting their expectations and their values onto you. And oftentimes when our values and how we present ourselves to the world and all of these things align with what society or the people around us, when it aligns, we don't get any pushback. We see zero friction. We're just living like, oh, we're all vibing. It's oftentimes when they don't align, when somebody is triggered by you existing, when your personality simply just doesn't gel with another person, that you're able to then clearly see, oh, there's a distinction here. Okay, I was just being myself. I don't think I was doing anything wrong. Like, you can reflect on these things. And once you identify that, you can then decide, okay, well, or maybe you might have an experience where you're like, oh, I was being kind of selfish with something, or maybe my values are skewed in some way and I'm realizing to be more considerate of other people. But these are the overarching themes that can come up for you right now. And the last thing that I want to say to you, my Cancer friends, when it comes to this Leo full moon happening, if you're Cancer rising, happening in your second house of finances, values, but also self-love and resources, is when you predicate your self-worth on positive reinforcement, compliments, the approval of others. Like, basically, let's say that everybody's complimenting you. Here's a great example. I'm a content creator. I have a lot of comments in my videos that are very positive and supportive and fantastic, and I'm so grateful for them. But if I predicated my value solely on the comment section, where right now it's all positive, that essentially means that if something negative is said, that also is, my values are also predicated on the negative too. And so my point is I just want to mention that as well. I don't know if that resonates with you when it comes to the approval at your job or within your family or your friend group or your society or your neighborhood or whatever, the importance of being able to identify what you personally, where your self-worth comes from, and making sure that that's from you. And at the very least, if it's outside of yourself, we are community-based organisms. At the very least, it is dependent on people who you respect and who are living the type of life, or better, that you want to live. That's very important. Anyway, these are some overarching things that could happen for you guys. So I just wanted to be thorough. But all that's to say, I'm wishing you a beautiful Leo full moon, and I will see you at the end for the journal prompts. Hello to my Leo friends, the stars of the show. Hello. I'm happy to be with y'all, because I feel like many people with prominent Leo placements, you guys are able, especially as we grow and mature into the Leo placements, we're able to be more grounded in what makes us who we are and have a clear distinction of this is who I am versus this is what other people want me to be. And these are my values. I'm going to speak up for it. I love my Leos for that as well. Very big on making sure that there's a moral and ethical alignment with our actions. But all that to say, this full moon is all about you. And so it can be very, very deeply personal. I'm looking at my notes here. This could signify a culmination point for many of you as it pertains to your identity, your self-expression, and how you show up in the world in general. But with so many planets across from you, you know, in the sign of Aquarius, the sign of the collective, it may feel like the world could maybe want you to shrink. You might have some experiences, one small one big one, a few days leading up to the day of or following this full moon, where essentially it results in you reflecting on where you stand when it comes to other people's approval, but also maybe like for some of you, a mirror might be held up to maybe how, not self-centered, maybe for some of you, but how in the pursuit of self-acceptance, maybe there can be a little bit more of a balancing act when it comes to consideration of others. And also, I feel like for many of you, you have such a power in leading, right? Leo is all about courage, leadership, also the spotlight and the courage to be in the spotlight. And I think that for some of you, around the time of this full moon, you might realize that there is power in you stepping up to the plate to lead. And in a small way, that might manifest as you deciding to take up the uncomfortable task of educating people on maybe some misinformation that's being shared online, you know, or what comes to mind. I'm saying that because what comes to mind is that I feel like sometimes family members could be led down like a bad path because social media is trying to like polarize us. And sometimes it's up to the younger generations of people who are a little bit more proficient in this stuff. There's a little bit more of a critical gaze on the dynamics of social media that can then translate it and better help other people. That can be uncomfortable if it feels like you're disagreeing with people. I don't know. That's a very specific thing that came to mind. But ultimately, because this full moon is happening in your first house, this is a very potent time to pause and reflect on anything that might be hindering your ability to strike a balance between being authentically who you are and being considerate of others. And where do you strike that balance? Because I don't know, I think that there can be overarching conversation around things like that. And I say that because, again, Aquarius is very much this collective aspect of things. It's this very progressive sign that's all about interconnectedness and community and equitability. And we're looking to strike this balance because we have so many planets there. And I think that there could be something notable that happens that really brings a spotlight onto the power that you have in terms of thinking for yourself and speaking up, and how you've used that power and how you could use that power for the greater good or for your community in some way. So that is the overarching themes that I see for you, my Leo friends. I'm wishing you a beautiful full moon, all about you, baby. And I will see you at the end for the journal prompts. Hello to my Virgo friends. So this full moon is happening in your 12th house of the unseen, the hidden secrets. Think about like your blind spots sometimes. The 12th house in traditional astrology is also considered the house of like hidden enemies, but it's also seen as this house of retreat, sabbatical, and drawing your energy back to yourselves. It's the house also of endings. Full moon can signify in general a potential ending or letting go of something. And I think that for many of you, there could be a sort of symbolic or mental chapter that's shifting or closing for you that I think that for some of you, this is a chapter that has been closing for a while and you're just now realizing it's like out of your vision, like you've actually kind of moved on a little bit. And then I think that for some of you, this could signify a time where you actually have a catalyst that makes you realize how important it is for you to take some time to yourself and draw your energy back to yourself. And without that, you're realizing that like you've been flying blind or like you haven't been observant as you could be. There could be some experiences like that. But from a more emotional lens, because the moon does rule over our emotions, hidden emotions or even subconscious psychological or emotional patterns could surface right now for better in a way that's very constructive, where even through therapy or conversations or just pausing to reflect, you're kind of making these connections of, oh my goodness, I've subconsciously self-sabotaged to keep myself, in this sort of comfort zone of some way, or my goodness, I'm realizing that me and in our relationship, there's this dynamic between us that we didn't even realize was there. And now we do. And it's like, actually, this is really constructive because now we can do this and that. But things can be illuminated for some of you. And for a lot of you, you might be seeing more clearly where, again, self-sabotage or even collective pressure has led to more self-silencing in some way. I think that some of you, through the clarity that it's brought up right now, it for many of you, because this is a Leo full moon, it could lead to you stepping into a more authentic approach to things, because you're realizing that you might have been shape-shifting a little bit to go along to get along, especially as it pertains to your own spiritual beliefs for some of you, but even your own mental state. What comes to mind is that I think that some of you might be realizing certain family or friendship dynamics that on one side of the spectrum, for worse, you're kind of like, am I in a toxic friend group? Or you're kind of realizing, oh my goodness, this is just really specific, but this is an example. What comes to mind is maybe somebody's in therapy and they realize they have been so hard and judgmental to everyone around them because they've been so hard on themselves and judgmental to themselves, because then they're realizing, oh my goodness, this has been hidden, 12th house, hidden things, hidden enemies, or even hidden subconscious things. When I was a child, my parents were hard on me, or they weren't hard on me. But when I was a child, other people were hard on me in school or in society. And I felt like I needed to fit into this box to be likable. These are some of the many overarching themes that could be happening around this time for you, my Virgo friends. And it can be very helpful if you have any experiences or notice that you're making any sort of connections around this time, that you don't shy away from them, especially if they make you feel uncomfy. Something hidden being revealed. The full moon is this culmination point. It makes our intuitive and emotional abilities very sharp. It brings deeper down, even disgruntled maybe, or just push down suppressed emotions or even personality traits or ideas, can bring them to the surface, can be very illuminating for you. So I think that right now can be a very great time to journal, therapy, talk therapy, do something that allows you to maybe in the past has made you feel like you can better articulate yourself. This is kind of niche as well. I've gone to theatrical performances. I've gone to stand up or improv, and through watching people expressing themselves has informed me on my own mindset in different ways. I know that that's kind of niche, but it doesn't always have to be just journaling as a catalyst to you understanding yourself or connecting the dots in some way. So be mindful of what uniquely that might look like for you. I personally love journaling as well. Anyway, that's my reading for you, my Virgo friends. I'm sending you my love, and I will see you at the end for the journal prompts. Hello to my Libra friends. Woo, this Leo full moon is happening in your 11th house, which is all about community, friendships, and your larger sort of bird's eye view, so to speak, of where you sit in the grand scheme of things from a collective perspective. And you may, I'm looking at my notes right now. It's kind of far away. Let me move them over here. But you may also feel there could be tension between this blending of groups in the collective and sort of standing out for yourself. And I think that for some of you guys, 11th house also really involves your friendship groups and the people you hang out with and that you collaborate with, maybe on a professional or creative level, or maybe just in your neighborhood. But what comes to mind are social norms and expectations, and certain social dynamics as well. What comes to mind is either in your friend circles or even family dynamics. Maybe there's something that you want to do that you like, or that you're interested in, or maybe something you believe in. Maybe it's a political or spiritual belief or something that doesn't fully gel well, maybe. And I'm not trying to focus on negative things necessarily or per se, but it's more so that we have this Leo full moon and it's in your 11th house of the collective, and it's in opposition with 5 planets in Aquarius, which also has to do with the collective. And an opposition aspect indicates a bit of tension when it comes to balancing the me, that being the Leo theme, and the we, that being the Aquarius themes. And with this, and so I think that for some of you, you might have some experiences a few days leading up to the day of or following this full moon that ends up inviting you. Maybe it's a positive or maybe a negative experience, more constructive experience or more heavy experience, but you might have there might be some type of dynamic around this time that spotlights for you how much you have assimilated or avoided assimilating in terms of the collective that you exist within and what that means for you. And I think that on one side of the coin, for some of you, that might look like realizing that some of your personality traits have faded within a new friend group. What comes to mind is like even your career. Sometimes, you act a certain way at your job and that's totally fine. You want to assimilate in a certain way and that can help you with your career to behave certain ways and to kind of like lean into the company culture. And there's this other side of it where you might have some experiences that spotlight, like, have you lost a bit of your more authentic self because you're at work all the time and you're kind of like posturing or framing or like masking in a certain way? And like, how can you strike a balance there that's conducive to it all? Or maybe there isn't a balance. Maybe the balance for you is, yeah, I behave that way, but now that, maybe I'm having these experiences or I'm watching this video, I'm realizing the importance of really pouring into the other aspects of myself that feel like if I don't do this, I'm going to feel stifled in some way. Or like, I'm realizing that I've been down because I haven't been leaning into these other things that interest me. But overall, it can be very helpful right now to honor where your values differ. Like honor that there might be an imbalance there and actually reflect on it and acknowledge it. Because it's when we avoid kind of acknowledging these things that we can almost stunt our own growth. And yeah. So, and also something else I noted here is that the right people won't ask you to dim your shine. You know what I mean? Oh, it's a great, I watched the funniest movie last night with my husband. It was actually very enraging, but funny. It's called The Election. It stars Reese Witherspoon and Matthew Broderick, I think his name is. Crazy movie, crazy work movie. I don't know if they'd be able to make a movie like that today. Maybe they could. But there was an overarching theme within the movie where Reese Witherspoon played this student who's very, very ambitious, very industrious, very direct and outgoing. And essentially how, because she had this bright light and stood out so drastically from her other classmates in high school, that she ended up having a target on her back. And she ended up, yeah, I won't tell you what happens, but that kind of comes to mind in that oftentimes we fear having a target on our back because from visibility. Oftentimes the fear of visibility stems from not wanting to ruffle feathers and a fear of, once I show who I am and how that might be slightly different from other people, and now I stand out, and now somebody might not like that. And I just, yeah, like I said, the right people won't ask you to dim your shine. And also, what can it look like for you to strike that balance between company culture and understanding what is needed to kind of go along, to get along, to progress your career maybe, or some type of collaborative thing. And what on your own or with the right people allows you to show up authentically as yourself. Yeah, that is my reading for you, my Libra friends. And I am wishing you a beautiful full moon, a beautiful Leo full moon that's illuminating and constructive. And if it's cathartic, if there is a breaking point, I wish that it is something that is so constructive and insightful. And I will see you at the end for the journal prompts. Hello, hello to my Scorpio friends. So this full moon in Leo will be all about your public image, reputation, think even legacy. And for that reason, oftentimes 10th house is associated with your career as well. Think about what you might have studied in school and how now through your job, you're providing this legacy, either financially or legacy as through the people whose lives you touch, through utilizing your expertise to help or support other people. That could be, I don't know what comes to mind. Maybe you're in the medical field, or maybe you're a teacher, or maybe, I don't know, you could be anything really. Because we all are interdependent on the various jobs and expertise that everybody has. But ultimately, if this is your rising sign, this full moon is happening in your 10th house. That does involve public image, your outer circle, your reputation. And for that reason, because this full moon is happening there and it's in this opposition aspect with 5 planets that are, that are in your 4th house. Yeah, your 4th house, which signifies your inner world, your past. The 10th house can also signify your future, the direction you're going, and the 4th can signify your past and where you've come from. There can be a bit of pressure that might pop up for some of you as it pertains to those overarching themes. You might notice, you might have some experiences that could spotlight for you where there might be a bit more pressure to conform on a more professional level. And so this lunation could be asking for many of you, is success costing you your authenticity? And also some of you, it could be the other side of the coin. You might have some experiences where somebody, maybe in a kind way, maybe in a stern way, maybe directly, verbally, or indirectly, there might be some expression or experiences that spotlight where you might have been overly focused on yourself, and where you could be offering a bit more of your wisdom and a little bit more of your support to other people that you collaborate with. And there's a high likelihood that could be in your professional space. And so these are some overarching themes that could happen for you, or that could occur like a few days leading up to the day of or following this full moon, this Leo full moon for you, my Capricorn friends. And so I feel like around the time of this full moon, it can be really helpful to pause and specifically reflect on your career, specifically reflect on that balance between who you are authentically, your interest, your personality, and how much of that overlaps with how you show up at work, and how you show up on a public scale. I think that for some of you also, you might have some experiences where how you show up publicly is a bit challenged. What comes to mind is that phrase like, I think you're being kind of fake, or you're being a little disingenuous right now. That might be something that is expressed to you, or you might have experiences that makes that sort of be called into question. Or you might call that into question with others in some way. But there might be this sort of like tension or challenging of sorts when it comes to how you present yourself, especially to the public. Think about how you present yourself in a meeting, or I don't know if you're a content creator or if you put things out into the world. These are some of the themes that might pop up for you. My Scorpio friends. Oh my goodness. I think I called you guys Capricorns earlier, so that's my bad. This is a Scorpio reading. Hello, Scorpios. But all that to say, that is my reading for you, and I will see you at the end for the journal prompts. Hello to my Sagittarius friends. So this full moon is pretty interesting in that this Leo full moon will be involving a lot of Sagittarius themes. Some themes that involve higher learning, your spiritual beliefs, your philosophical views, and thus that can inform your political views and ideologies. Things that involve your beliefs and even worldviews might be under review right now. I think that for you guys, more so than maybe any other sign around the time of this full moon, you might either be exposed to or witness or be involved in more political or like ideological sort of conversations or experiences that highlight your ideological or spiritual or worldview belief systems, where they're either challenged or you feel the need to challenge others in some way, or there's a bit of pressure there. And what comes to mind is a lot of the things that we see going on in the West right now. I know some of you guys get a little irritated with me when I talk about the Northern Hemisphere, or I talk about things going on in the US, but I live here and I can only speak on what I experience and what I know, right? And so I don't want to attempt to act like I know what's going on anywhere else, you know what I mean? But I can speak to what's going on in the West right now. And there's a lot of tension when it comes to immigration, right, in the US. And there's a lot of notable conversations happening around right now around reform and you know, how, whether or not how things are being approached is ethical or moral or the right way, right? And I don't know why I did that, but because it's a very serious topic. But I'm just saying that because this is happening in your ninth house, for some of you, not all, this could manifest as there being a big focus on your political views. I'm just going to say that straight up. But for many of you, this could also show up as you might have some experiences that really invite you to dive deeper into your spiritual practices and focus on more of your spiritual practices and even your philosophical views from an authentic place. For some of you, this could show up in the church or in like a religious group where you kind of realize, oh, I've been kind of doing this one way because a lot of people say that this is the right way to do it, but I've noticed that I feel way more aligned and connected spiritually when I do it this way or something like that. But there's this me versus we theme coming up with this full moon as it pertains to those overarching belief systems, higher learning, research, and there being tension within those spaces for some of you. And so if you've maybe been silencing your deeper truths for the sake of fitting into a particular ideology, this could signify a time or a catalyst where you break free of that, where you finally find the words or something shifts in some way, where you kind of see things for what they are more clearly. And so it can be helpful to let your lived experience reshape your path. Like the highest form of intelligence and wisdom is the ability to admit when you're wrong, not only to other people, but to yourself, and reshape your belief systems in alignment with new information. The ability to take in new information, and even if it challenges or goes against what you believed before or thought before, and being able to say, I didn't know that, and now I do, and now I'm going to be able to move, to change. And that is truly a signification of a free thinker, especially in times like these, especially in the West with so much going on with like, there's so much polarizing content that is creating the craziest level of group think and like this mentality of like us versus them that is so artificially created. And if you're able to like learn something new, even from the opposing side or something like that, or learn something different, and it not only can be helpful, right? But it can also help you to better communicate with, I don't know, the opposing side. Being able to better understand people that you don't agree with can help you to find the words to actually help to more efficiently educate them and more efficiently show their blind spots to them, because you actually understand where they come from and the reasoning why they chose to do or advocate for certain things that you don't agree with. Okay, that's my reading for you, my Sagittarius friends. Let me know in the comments if any of that resonates, if you had any experiences leading up to this full moon or anything like that resonates. And yeah, I'm wishing you a beautiful and illuminating Leo full moon, and I'll see you at the end for the journal prompts. Hello to my Capricorn friends. I was doing the Scorpio reading and for some reason I kept on calling them Capricorns. And you guys, you're on my mind. You're on my mind. But anyway, for my Capricorn friends, this Leo full moon, especially if this is your rising sign, this is going to be happening in your 8th house of shared resources. The 8th house is considered the house of inheritance, the house of the ramifications, what comes after marriage, what comes after the contracts, what comes after the initial relationship. So when you go more into interdependence, or even codependence. The 8th house is also the house of resources and money, but more so other people's money. And I like to describe the 8th house as like these two major areas, similar to the 2nd house, because this is like the sort of financial value system axis. 2nd house is directly across from it. And that's where the sun, Mars, Mercury, Venus, and Pluto, they're all in Aquarius in your 2nd house right now. But this full moon is in your 8th house. And all of that to say, this full moon is ushering in experiences for many of you that end up spotlighting power dynamics, the pros and maybe even the cons of certain levels of intimacy, again, shared resources, and again, like contracts for some of you. and what that means for you. And maybe you guys might have some experiences around the time of this full moon where you're actually able to realize this distinction between those that you have more intimate, more acute power dynamics with, and like being able to step away from that for a second and see who you are as an individual outside of that. And I think that for some of you around the time of this full moon, there could be a spotlight on a distinction between you fulfilling other people's needs, which is perfectly fine in some situations, and whether you actually even like that or want that. Because sometimes we can be so blinded by people pleasing or codependence of like being, you can sometimes make yourself feel comfortable and happy because you made somebody else happy. And because they're happy, now you're safe. Or now it's like, no, there's no drama. But for some of you around the time of this full moon, there could be a spotlight on a challenging of whether or not that people-pleasing dynamic is actually a form of manipulation, and it's not an accurate reflection of what you actually like, and how for some of you, you might actually be co-creating dynamics you don't like because you're always centering somebody else. But if you actually were honest about what works for you and what your love language is, or what you might need in order for you to feel safe and balanced, if you were honest about those things, you could actually give these people the opportunity to meet you where you're at. And sometimes you've already expressed those things and they don't want to do that, and you're codependent and you're leaning more into their world and what they need. These are just some of the things that come to mind as it pertains to the 8th house, and especially because this Leo full moon is the overarching themes of it are this balance of the me versus the we, and the performer versus the collective, and this distinction between individuality and who you are in a collective space, which is also not necessarily a bad thing. But ultimately, this full moon is one where you might feel emotionally raw, as deeper truths could rise to the surface as it pertains to your more intimate relationships. But also, the 8th house again has to do with power dynamics. So that could involve work as well. But finally, I think that this time could be a potent moment for releasing fears of being seen or judged and reclaiming more emotional sovereignty and exploring what that means, because sometimes rocking the boat might be necessary to get off the boat. Sometimes disagreements are really healthy because it helps you to directly tackle where you don't see eye to eye and explore how you can better coexist, or how, somebody can maybe compromise a bit more than the other, or both of you can. But that's my reading for you, my Capricorn friends. I am wishing you a beautiful Leo full moon. That's it. Okay, I'll see y'all at the end for the journal prompts. Peace. Hello to my Aquarius friends. This Leo full moon is happening in your 7th house of equitability, of moral balancing of things, but namely your relationships, especially relationships of the heart, whether they are romantic or closer relationships, are ones that are going to be at the forefront right now, that are really spotlighted for you. And so this isn't just about who you're partnered with, but also who you become around those people, who you become around those relationships. So if you've maybe lost your sense of self in people pleasing or group identity, this moon could be asking you to come back home to who you are. But I will say that that's just one side of the coin, especially considering that this huge stellium of planets in the sign of Aquarius in your 1st house, that being Mars, the planet of war, aggression, energy, passion, Mercury, the planet of communication, information exchange, the internet, Pluto, the planet of deeper rooted emotions, and sometimes even the taboo, and sometimes unexpected, almost like, I don't want to say outbursts, but just expression of things. And then we have Venus, the planet of love and relationships. These are all planets that are activating your 1st house of self-identity, the things that you initiate, and they're in direct opposition. There's this tension between them and the moon in Leo in your 7th house of relationships. And so there's a lot of overarching themes for you. I feel like when I said that this full moon is about the me versus the we, this is a huge theme specifically for you, my Aquarius friends. And so around the time of this full moon, it can be, like I said before, there can be overarching themes that you might experience that invite you to reflect on how much that you have maybe shed or let go of or forgotten about your personality in order to go along to get along. But on the other side of the coin, you might have some experiences right now where it feels like the world all around you is asking you to acknowledge it, to be considerate of it. People, places, people in your relationships. I feel like for some of you Aquarius friends, you might have pretty notable experiences that spotlight, hey, we need a little bit more focus on where you stand collectively. Like we need a little bit more focus from you or energy from you with contributing to relationships, contributing to certain dynamics, and for there to be a bit more equitability within them. So it could be a little bit too much of you, it could be a little bit too much of them, but this overarching theme is you might have some experiences where you're invited to reflect on whether or not you want to work to strike a better balance. And for some of you, you might realize in order for me to strike a balance, according to their definition of it, I might lose myself and maybe I don't want that. And that's perfectly okay. And it's perfect timing because this is a full moon and full moons are great for releasing and letting go of what does not work for you, what is weighing you down on your path moving forward. And this path that's being spotlighted right now in your 7th house is the path of what leaves you feeling balanced in your relationships. And so that's my reading for you, my Aquarius friends. I am sending you my love. I hope that you have a very illuminating and constructive Leo full moon. And I'll see you at the end for the journal prompts. Hello to my fellow Pisces friends. This full moon is really lighting up your 6th house of labor and the energy that you give to people, the energy that you receive, but also the organization that you have in your life, what keeps you balanced, what nourishes you enough to be able to sustainably give your energy and your labor to others. So that is really, those are the overarching themes of the 6th house, which is if you're a Pisces rising, this is that area of life that's being focused for you right now. The other aspect of that is, how are you creating structure and consistency in your own life that allows you to sustainably show up? And again, this has to do with your daily rhythms. I'm looking at my notes here, work-life balance, and your overarching well-being. These are the things that are being illuminated for you right now. So you may realize where you might have been over-sacrificing your time or energy to meet more collective needs, or there could be a spotlight right now on how you might have not been putting enough energy into the collective. And you actually could be challenged right now to reflect on not just the labor that you give, but the labor that you receive from others. It's not just about you and, your energy being given out, but also the energy that has been provided to you. These are some things that could be coming up right now. But I think that overall, around the time of this full moon, it could be helpful to focus on what it looks like to reclaim your schedule. What does that require of you, especially for my entrepreneurs? And look at this hair, girl, get it together. I'm sorry. But just to kind of like encapsulate the overarching themes for you, this full moon that's happening in the sign of Leo is really activating these life areas that involve your labor, your work, the energy that you put in to get out what you want in life, whether that has to do with your career, where you work, or maybe even the energy and work that you put into your home as a caretaker, the energy that you give to collaborate with your partner or whoever you live with. Think about the chores. Think about the actions that are needed to sort of maintain your life in some way. And the sustainability around that. What comes to mind also is, how are you nourishing yourself? Are you taking those supplements? I don't know why, but what comes to mind is omega-3s, mental health, omega-3s, EHA, EPA, DHA. These are, the healthy fatty acids that help us focus, that help to nourish our mind, that allow us to better be present in the labor and the work that we give. So overall, especially because we see that Leo is here, but directly in opposition from the 6th house, we see that, Mars, Mercury, Venus, Pluto, and the Sun are all in Aquarius. They're all in your 12th house of the hidden and the unseen right now, of hidden enemies as well, or the hidden subconscious motivations or influences in our life. And also, the power of retreat, rest, reflection, there are these overarching themes between Leo, the full moon in Leo in your sixth house of labor, work, and showing up, and also recognition and being seen doing these things. But also there's this opposition there between the very much needed rest and reflection in order to better identify what might be in your blind spot that could be hindering your ability to work or your ability to receive help, receive labor. Maybe that these are the people that you hire. Maybe there's tension with those people or something like that. Or maybe there's tension again with this work-life balance. But around the time of this full moon, a few days leading up to the day of and following it, you might have some experiences where for many of you, it could be a very constructive catalyst where you kind of see the path forward more clearly when it comes to ways to navigate work that's way more aligned with who you are versus aligned with what society wants. What comes to mind is I work for myself, and so I'm always trying to kind of figure out like, what is the sort of work-life balance that works best for me? And there's so many ways to do that. You know, I know people who work from home or they don't work from home, but they find that the way that they commute, you know, the way that they set up their mornings or after work, and the way that they collaborate to receive labor from others, either from a colleague or somebody you're hired, reflecting on those dynamics around the time of this full moon can be very insightful and illuminating to kind of see a clearer path forward that helps you understand the actual actionable steps that provide a bit more balance between your work and the rest of your life. I hope that was illuminating for you, my fellow Pisces friends. I'm sending you my love for this full moon, and I hope that this Leo full moon is illuminating for you and insightful, and that if there is challenges, or if you're somebody who does experience some type of burnout around this time, that I'm wishing and I'm hoping that it is a catalyst for change for the better. Boundaries. That's one more thing, boundaries. Not just boundaries at work, but maybe even boundaries at home, boundaries with your personal things. What comes to mind for me is boundaries with social media and how that has siphoned a lot of my energy and impacted my focus, which has impaired work, and how I hope that this full moon can illuminate being able to set up healthy boundaries to find more balance and routine and structure and groundedness in whatever it is that you do consistently as it pertains to any sort of labor that you give or receive. Okay. Wow, that was so wordy. I'm sorry, guys. Okay, I'll see you right now in a second for the journal prompts. All right, y'all, it is time for these Leo full moon journal prompts. If you have your Aura-Line astrology planner, either the physical planner or the digital planner, which are still on sale, you can find in the description box. Go ahead and flip on over to the dedicated Leo full moon journaling prompt area to write these out. If you don't have that, just grab a notebook, perfectly fine. So the first journal prompt is, where have you maybe been playing small to avoid standing out? How has that maybe held you back? But also, how has that served you, right? Like, oftentimes we have a fear of being seen in some way because sometimes it can benefit us when it comes to our comfort, but has that held you back in any way? Next prompt is there any part of you that is craving expression right now? And I don't mean expression as in like expression on a stage, you know, that is very Leo coded, very Leo themed, but any sort of expression that you feel called to have right now, that could be alone in your room and you're painting or singing or exploring, like, how does my voice sound? I haven't sung in a while. Like, how does it sound? Or expression when it comes to expressing maybe even your spiritual or societal or worldviews, from a place of wanting to educate people or help to normalize something that you feel that is important. Under this full moon, is there anything that you feel ready to release or let go of that might have been weighing you down or that you have realized isn't fully in alignment with the path that you want to move forward going down? This could be habits, mindsets, limiting beliefs, people, places. And if not that, that's totally fine too. Oh, and my last one, I'm trying to make a point of asking this for every full moon because full moons signify a culmination point, which could, you know, highlight areas or things that you want to let go of that are hindering your path. But that could, a culmination point in this full moon spotlighting things could also spotlight how far you've come and how much you've grown in a certain area of life. So this other prompt is there anything that you're really proud of yourself for, or anything that you realize you've come a long way with that you want to just take a moment to acknowledge? That concludes everything. I just want to remind you that if you missed the sold out astrology planners or wall calendars, I do sell digital versions of the planners and a digital wall calendar that is very unique and seamlessly blends into your pre-existing life, because it seamlessly uploads into your digital calendars. So you can have a little widget on your phone that shows the top transits. It's really cool. Check it out. It's linked. Sign up for the Align newsletter to get emailed these videos the day before every single full moon and new moon, and to get emailed basically an email version of these videos with an overview, a forecast of what is to come for every full and new moon. I have little surveys on there too, which is cool. And that is basically it. We did it, you guys. Okay, with all of that said, I'm going to leave you with my favorite affirmation and quote, which is, be gentle with yourself, because life is about the journey, not the destination. All right, I will see you in the next one. Peace.